Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. Today guys, I'll be checking out this interesting video from Sowell Reacts, and it's titled "The Threat People Like Obama and Neil deGrasse Tyson Pose to America." You guys, I'm excited for this, and without much ado, let's see what this video is all about.
The vision of the anointed, self-congratulations as a basic for social policy. I mean, you posit here that they're a group of self-anointed elitists who are responsible for what in America?
Well, for much of the social policy of the past 30 years and for the disastrous consequences that have followed from those policies.
And who are these people?
Well, there would be people in the media, in the academic world, and in politics, particularly those who believe that third parties can make better decisions than people can make for themselves, and particularly when they are those third parties. I think most people who have not been in the academic world would have to see the academics in action to realize how deeply they believe this. I can remember a conference at Middlebury College some years ago in which they were laying out these plans for how they would manipulate the poor in order to get them to do this, to do that, to do the other, and I said, who are we to be running these people's lives? And they looked at me as if I were a man from Mars, speaking a language they had never heard before.
Do you therefore believe, I mean, this is almost, university kind of debate. Do you therefore believe that the government has no responsibility for those less fortunate than ourselves? If free enterprise, they cannot find a place in the market economy?
Well, there are many things the government can do. I think the most important thing they can do is maintain a framework of law in which people do, in fact, find jobs and find progress. After all, this is not a hypothetical question as if this situation has never come up before. I mean, look at the entire history of the United States. I mean, the United States did not become a prosperous country only after the New Deal. I mean, history didn't begin in the 1960s or even in the 1930s. And you look at the history of blacks, for that matter, that blacks have come a very long way, long before the first civil rights law was passed in the 1960s. In fact, in the 5 years prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, blacks rose into professional and similar occupations to a greater extent than in the 5 years afterwards.
So you would have, even if you look back now, as an economist and in some ways as a historian, at the civil rights legislation that was passed in 64, 65, and through the Great Society, you, in terms of voting rights as well, you would say those laws, those civil rights laws, were unnecessary and counterproductive?
Oh no. You had to get rid of the Jim Crow system. You had to have voting rights and so on. But I remember back in 1964 writing to a friend, as the Civil Rights Act of 64 was being fought out in Congress, that I hoped this law would pass with absolutely no crippling amendments, exactly as it was written, because among other things, it had some good things in it. Was one reason, but the other reason was that I was convinced that it would not have the effect that they thought it would have, and that what I assumed very incorrectly was that once people saw that yes, this would break down the Jim Crow system, it would not cause any dramatic improvement in the economic condition of black people, and that people would then say, no, now we have to turn to something else in order to do that. And I was completely wrong about that, when it didn't produce that result, they said, well, that just shows we need more of the same, which is the old argument. We try policy X and it absolutely goes nowhere. We need stronger policy X.
This argument has been, I'm sure, voiced to you before. Clarence Thomas benefited from affirmative action.
Who said so?
Clarence Thomas says so, I bet.
No.
He doesn't?
No, he does not.
Clarence Thomas does not say that affirmative action programs helped him in terms of the educational opportunities he received.
He's never said it to me.
Do you think he would say no to that question?
He might well. For one thing, my understanding, and I haven't researched it, my understanding is that he was admitted to college the year before they began their affirmative action program.
I don't know his answer.
And what the program did was to delegitimize what he had done. That he was a man with an outstanding academic record, and he goes out into the job market, and people, and despite this,
and they look at him and they say, you got there only because of affirmative action.
You guys, what are your thoughts on this video? Do you agree with Sowell on this? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and let's continue watching, you guys.
Your own merits.
Yeah, whereas ordinarily someone with that kind of record, you'd look at it and say, hey, this guy is really a world beater. But no, and I've seen that in my own life. I'm old enough that I've gone through the whole metamorphosis.
And what have you seen in your own life?
All right. When I was in the Marine Corps and during the Korean War, I was trained as a photographer. And I was assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where a great many of Southerners were in the Marine Corps, white Southerners. And in that barracks, whenever somebody had a photographic problem, his camera wasn't working, his pictures didn't come out right and so forth, they would come to me. I was astonished. The biggest redneck in the barracks would come to me to ask me, and there were all these white photographers.
Fix my camera.
Yeah. You say, why is this? And I finally figured it out. They said, if this guy is black and he's a photographer, he must be some photographer, Now, when I started teaching in the early 1960s at Douglas College, I read up on all the stuff about new teachers, you see, and how it's hard to get the respect of the students, particularly if you're not much older than they are, and I looked younger than I was. And so I worried about that, you see, and I walked in that room the first day, and there was instant respect. And it sort of took me aback. And I realized, no, they're saying, look, this guy, I was the first black male to teach there. This guy must be something else, Go forward now 10 years. By this time, I've completed my degree. I've written my books, journal articles, the whole thing. I'm now teaching at UCLA, and students will come up to me at the end of the term, and they'll say how much they like the course and all that. And somewhere in the course of that, there'll be a slip-up, and they'll let it out that they were quite surprised that the course was as good as it was. And one of the things that struck me even before the end of the term, one kid came to me one day, and he had a passage in the book he was having trouble with. And he said, "Can you tell me what this means?" I explained to him what that passage meant. He said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, I wrote the textbook." And he looked in the front, and he's really embarrassed. But this is what affirmative action has done, you see.
So you can't see any positive
I'm sure.
contributions to affirmative action.
I don't doubt
that in fact it increased the pool, as is frequently used. The expression of what affirmative action can do is increase the pool of
I don't
applicants.
know what that means, and I've never had anybody explain it to me. I've studied affirmative action in this country, in India, in Malaysia, in Sri Lanka, in Nigeria. They have some version of it in Israel.
Well, let me explain as it was explained to me. It is the notion of, let's say you're on the admissions committee at Harvard. And you're going to choose so many people. You're going to let people in for a variety of reasons. One is sheer academic merit. They scored 1,600 on the college boards. That's a good entry. They've got a brilliant academic and athletic background, and they happen to be a virtuoso violin player. And the violin player helps. Or let's say they come from Nevada, and they don't have a lot of Nevadans at Harvard. And let's also say that they come from Sri Lanka. They don't have many people from Sri Lanka there. And let's also say that they also are African American, and that ought to be a factor in choosing from that pool. Maybe that's one of the considerations.
Because what?
Because diversity of a student body is a healthy factor.
I'm fascinated with the extent to which words, we're conditioned to react like Pavlov's dog to words. I hear diversity. Someone was asking
Don't make me look bad, Professor.
Someone today who was a trustee of a college was saying that they were going to pick a new college professor. I said, what you should do is have a stopwatch there and just count how long it is till each of the contestants says the word diversity. And the guy who says it, he's 35 minutes into the interview, and the other guy who says it, the first sentence, the guy who takes 35 minutes, he should be at the top of the list. The guy who said it in the first sentence should be at the bottom. Because the question
what's wrong with diversity? I don't get the point.
My point is that this is a word that has become magic. What does it mean, if anything? Are you saying to me that all black people are alike, therefore you've got to mix and match by race? It's not diverse unless it's diverse along these dimensions? No,
I'll tell you what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that it would be different to have people of different kinds of experiences. And we mentioned Sri Lanka, didn't we? And it'd be interesting to have some people with an Asian background. Wait, an Asian background, African American, people that come from Fifth Avenue and Park Avenue, as well as from Henderson, North Carolina. All of that would make a healthy student body.
You mean to tell me?
I don't think everybody ought to come from the sons of Harvard graduates.
All right.
Or daughters.
Mainly, partly because they're not always the best students.
No, that's right.
But all right.
You guys, what are your thoughts on this video, and what do you guys think about affirmative action? As for me, I think affirmative action does more harm than good. in any setting, in any institution. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. This is a very interesting topic, and I'm learning a lot from listening to Thomas Sowell. And you guys, let's continue watching.
That argument, I think that doesn't make it. I slipped my point there for a minute.
Well, I mean, you have thought long and hard about this, and much longer than I have, and you bring to bear
but wait. That's the theory. That's the theory. Unfortunately, the facts are quite different. In places like Harvard and Stanford and Cornell, what you have is the black son of the black doctor, who lived in the same neighborhood with the white son of the white doctor.
No, I got
and now you're giving me diversity because these two people are out in Winnetka someplace.
No, not necessarily. They have scholarships that they offer to kids who are not the son of
But now we're getting away from the whole racial thing. I'm saying the racial thing has been used as a proxy for something that is not a proxy for, because the vast majority of blacks who go to places like Harvard and Cornell and Stanford are not blacks from the ghetto. Those are blacks from out there. They're from Malibu. They're from Pacific Palisades. They're from Winnetka and so forth. And they're from the very same neighborhoods. They're from the very same neighborhoods as the whites are there. And so now you call it diversity because you see something with the naked eye.
All right, let me make a couple other points because I'm going to way ahead of myself here. Do you think that the era of these social engineers from whatever establishment they come from, media, academia, government, is over?
No, I wish it were. I think they're going to go underground. They're going to hunker down and wait out the storm.
Wait for the storm to change.
Absolutely, and we have people among the Republicans, for example, who I say these things like this are like crabgrass. You've got to root it out. Do not cut back on the appropriations for the national endowment. If you're not going to get rid of it.
You don't want to gut. Come on. I mean, you clearly don't want to gut the national
I do not. I want to destroy it entirely. Of course I don't want to gut it.
You want to dismantle it.
That's right, because it's like crabgrass.
And while you're at it, get public television as well.
You got it. But
well, you'll never appear on Meet Miller again, and thank you very much.
I never have anyway. No, but it's like crabgrass. These people are going to hunker down, and then they'll wait for change the political thing. And I say these guys are like somebody who's putting a lawnmower over crabgrass.
But these guys, you seem to be saying, are everywhere. I mean,
these guys. I mean,
but you're not talking about just bureaucrats. You're saying, you're saying it's the New York Times, it's CBS,
absolutely.
It's Harvard University and the Yale faculty,
absolutely, you got it.
UCLA faculty and the Stanford faculty, all of them.
Oh, absolutely.
What amazes me is that you buy into these conspiracies like this. It's
conspiracy? No, not a conspiracy at all.
That
I've never believed in conspiracy theories.
All these people somehow have come to, of power in the establishment, have come to this like-minded idea about...
Oh, that's happened many times in history.
Self-appointed...
And I don't believe it for a minute. I think if people at Harvard meet wholly independently and sealed off from people from Stanford, and they go into those committee rooms, they will come out with the same kinds of policies because they went in with the same assumptions.
And because their experiences, you suggest, are essentially the same. Probably.
Well, I don't know about that.
Then why do they come to the same conclusion?
Oh, because they operate under the same assumptions.
And why do they have the same assumptions?
For reasons which you can go back into history.
No, come on. Why do they have the same assumptions? What do you mean go back in history?
This has been a set of assumptions that's been very popular among intellectuals. What has happened in our time is that intellectuals have been taken much more seriously since the 60s than they were before. And I think we're suffering the consequences of it. It's not the first time in history that intellectuals have been taken seriously, and disasters have followed.
So we shouldn't have taken Milton Friedman seriously?
Milton Friedman is a very atypical intellectual.
You can't play this game and say, we shouldn't take intellectuals seriously, then accept those that I happen to think are right. We should take them seriously.
By seriously, I mean in the sense, I should have clarified this, in the sense that they are exempted from the test of facts. Did it work? When I hear people come on the air and say these lofty things, I say to myself, show me where we've ever gotten better off listening to people like this.
Right. All right.
I see these psychologists coming on and say how you should raise your children. I said, how are children better today now that we've been listening to these people for 30 years? Are they happier? Are they more learned? Test scores go down, venereal disease goes up, suicide rates go up. In what way are we better off for having listened to them?
But it seems to me that you do engage a little bit in group dismissal. That you, in a sense, wave your hand at anybody there,
on the contrary,
rather than saying that each of these kinds of institutions, or that there is not a group think in the institution.
There is. You tell me that groupthink. Someone did a survey at Stanford a couple of years ago. They found whole departments in which there was not one Republican.
Why then
whole departments?
Why is it that on the Washington, I mean, look at the editorial, people who write the editorials and under the bylines or for the paper of the Washington Post, you've got George Will there, and certainly what George Will says is different from what David Broder says.
Absolutely.
And certainly what Bill Safire says is quite different from what Tom Friedman says, from what
absolutely.
Maureen Dowd thinks.
Absolutely. But
they're all part of the New York Times.
That's very true.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they are the exceptions. They are the exceptions, as Milton Friedman is the exception. And
the only good guys are the exceptions, and meaning gender-free.
But you use the word dismissal. That's not. That's one of the words I latch onto in the chapter about the vocabulary of the anointed. That whenever you reach a conclusion that is different from what they have, they say you've dismissed it. You can spend 3 volumes analyzing it, and at the end you come up and saying it's wrong. Oh, he dismissed it.
Yeah.
Many of the things the government and intellectuals call a crisis are not objectively worse than other human conditions, and more often than not, the so-called crisis has been improving on its own without government intervention. But of course, as clearly pointed out, any effort to point to the evidence that the situation is actually getting better and doesn't need government intervention automatically earns you the label of a denier or accused of being in dismissal. If you try to point out that the level of carbon dioxide is not as critical as the fearmongers make it appear, you're called a climate denier. If you simply point out that your own white blood cells are more than capable of fighting the flu, well, you're called a V denier. So in fact, as far as intellectuals, or particularly the left, are concerned, you cannot think differently, because to think differently is not exactly thinking differently, but is denying the gospel of the group. So it's either you go with the flow or you're an infidel. You let me know what you think about this in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell if you're new to the channel. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, stay free.
You guys, that was such an interesting one from Thomas Sowell. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. It was really very, very informative, and I learned so much from listening to Thomas Sowell. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.